From 1975 to 1979, approximately 1 to 3 million people were massacred in Cambodia. While these numbers do not quite equate to the 5 to 11 million that were murdered during the Holocaust, the effects, however, are the same. All genocides have a rippling and a deafening effect on society and are especially important for criminologists and sociologists alike to study, in order to gain a deeper understanding and hopefully prevent any further acts aimed at taking out a group of people. Brother number 1, or Pol Pot, was born Saloth Sar in 1925. He was university educated and came from an affluent family. It was when he moved to Paris for post-secondary education that he became interested in and involved with communist groups. The Communist Party of Kampuchea, or the Khmer Rouge, came into play originally out of the struggle against French colonization. The party was fueled by the First Indochina War in the 1950s and grew over the next 20 years. Leading up to the Khmer Rouge regime, the Vietnam War and its effects spilled over into Cambodia. During this time, the United States military used parts of Cambodia and bombed areas, which catalyzed most of the animosity towards the Western world. In addition, the United States aided Marshal Lon Nol in a coup which included dropping 500,000 tons of bombs on the country to dispose the head of state, Prince Sihanouk. This resulted in 300,000 people dead and further separated the ties to the U.S. With help from the Vietnamese, the Khmer Rouge, now headed by Pol Pot, began pushing back Lon Nol's forces. In April of 1975, Pol Pot and the Khmer Rouge took control of Phnom Penh, Cambodia's capital. Almost immediately, they began forcing people into labor camps outside of the city. Here, physical abuse, disease, exhaustion, and starvation became a prevalent motif. The Khmer Rouge, for the majority ethnicity and red as the color of communism, found their footings in variations of Maoist and Marxist-Leninist theories. This inspired Pol Pot to transform Cambodia into a rural classless society comprised of collectivized farms. Pol Pot changed the country's name to the Democratic Kampuchea in 1976 and declared it Year Zero as the construction of his new republic. Pol Pot and the regime implemented cruel power and singled out doctors, teachers, monks, journalists, the rich, artists, anyone with an education, as well as ethnic or religious minorities. In addition, those that lacked the physical strength to work, those that could not make it to the camps, or those appearing to be in opposition to the party were executed. What separates this genocide from the others is the fact that anyone could be branded an enemy of the state, which helps to explain why many Khmer Rouge members were killed as well. To stop the weeds, you must also pull up their roots. This was a common thread in Khmer Rouge practices and illuminates why children and babies were not exempt from cruelty. Khmer Rouge members did not waste time figuring out if people were innocent or guilty, and immediately drove people into camps in order to be killed. In the early days of the camps, leaders relied on starvation to account for most of the killing. But with the numbers of those in camp increasing, a system called the killing fields was put into practice. If one could survive the intensive labor, they would live another day. But the elderly, handicapped, ill, and children were quick to become victims to the tiring work and lack of proper nourishment. The culture was also killed in these camps, including money, schools, styles of clothing, and religious practices. In addition, many of these public buildings were turned into prisons, camps, or other uses Pol Pot could find. Pol Pot was determined to sequester people and force connections with mothers and fathers to be broken. Children were trained to be soldiers due to their ability to be molded and controlled, and many of those kids were forced to murder their own parents. While the international community knew much of what was going on in Cambodia, many remained primarily silent during the progression of the genocide. The United States had just lost the Vietnam War and had no desire to get involved with this area of the world again. While there was public acknowledgement of the events, the public stance of being against this colossal massacre did not spur any action. In fact, it was not until the Khmer Rouge's government control was finally overthrown that these atrocities became an emphasis of international media. Clashes with Vietnam started in 1977 and continued until January 7, 1979, when Vietnam invaded Cambodia. Vietnam overthrew the Khmer Rouge regime and Pol Pot, while installing a socialist regime consisting of Cambodians that rebelled against the Khmer Rouge. Khmer Rouge members fled into jungles along the border and led guerrilla attacks against the Vietnamese. Many Khmer Rouge members fled to Thailand, where they ironically received aid from many Western countries. Many members of the United Nations, including the United States, voted in favor of keeping Cambodia's seat in order to display their disapproval of Vietnam and their interference. This was one of the ways that Cold War politics fueled decision-making at this time. With help from China and the Soviet Union, Vietnam continued to fight the Khmer Rouge regime for another 10 years. These years of fighting resulted in even more Cambodian deaths, while many had to flee to Thailand for medical care, food, and basic safety. Vietnam troops left Cambodia in 1989 due to lack of aid from the Soviet Union and economic sanctions the U.S. implemented. A temporary government was formed, and in 1991 a peace agreement was signed. Then, in 1993, the former monarch, Prince Sihanouk, was elected. Pol Pot continued to lead the Khmer Rouge until 1977, but the organization continued to exist until about 1999. At this point, most of the members had deserted the party, been arrested, or deceased. Cambodia faced struggles rebuilding their country due to a lack of foreign aid and the destruction of existing foundations. It was many years after the war before the country had any doctors, teachers, engineers, or other professionals due to the mass executions. Many survivors suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder and went untreated due to the lack of health care and a lack of open communication surrounding the atrocities. In addition, today, many Cambodians still face poverty. In 2003, those who committed murders between 1975 and 1979 began being prosecuted. Regrettably, many of the top-level Khmer Rouge members had either died or fled the country by this time, including Pol Pot, who died in 1998 of natural causes. Only 5 have been indicted for these crimes, and only 1 was convicted. While 36 years have passed since the Cambodian genocide, Cambodia is still greatly recovering from the effects of the Khmer Rouge and Pol Pot. There are remaining landmines which have been the source of several deaths and injuries, and many families are still separated. Even though the Khmer Rouge no longer exists today, many influential members of the organization are participants in Cambodian politics. In fact, the current Prime Minister, Hun Sen, was a former Khmer Rouge battalion commander. While genocides are no longer taking place in Cambodia, the events that occurred between 1975 and 1979 have left horrific waves of gripping effects on the Cambodian people.